Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. Hope you're doing well. Got a story at Zero Hedge I think it's really important to go over. It's entitled 6 Reasons Why Corporate Profits Will Fall 50%. And it's very important that we remind ourselves the times that we're in and adjust to those times where I think that most people are just riding a fence of uncertainty and doubt. They don't know that gut feeling that something's wrong. They don't know what to do with it. And I think a lot of people are going to be caught up in quite a market correction here in the near term. When I say near term, in the next 12 months. It says here, should stock valuations track this same decline in profits, it's entirely reasonable to expect the stock market to lose 2/3 of its valuation premium. All 6 of these reasons corporate profits will decline by half are common sense. But you know the old adage, common sense ain't so common. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with that. But I think that it seems to be getting worse and worse. If this last 3 or 4 years hasn't taught us that there is a lack of common sense in our country, I don't know what will. So reason number one, reversion to the mean. Profits that are double the historical average as a percentage of gross domestic product or GDP are highly likely not to be a sustainable new norm. The far more likely track is a revision to the historical average, which is about 50% below corporate profits' current 12% of GDP. Permanently elevated plateaus of stock valuations and corporate profits are both compelling chimera. Number 2, the boost phase of the globalization has ended. The era of hyperglobalization is clearly visible on the charts of corporate profits and corporate profits as a percentage of GDP. Right after China was accepted into the World Trade Organization in 2001, U.S. corporate profits skyrocketed in both nominal dollars and as a percentage of the U.S. economy. Now remember, we're talking about GDP numbers, and those are very important because the next 2 quarters, this current quarter we're in and we're about to wrap up, quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2023 are going to paint the picture that even the White House cannot hide by changing the definition of recession, and that is that our GDP is dropping. And once the public is told that we are officially in recession, that is when you are going to see fireworks fly because the average consumer will immediately slow their spending. It says here, globalization's boost phase that sent corporate profits into orbit has rounded the S-curve and is now in the stagnation or decline phase. And they show you this chart right here as we are now headed down. We've hit that plateau that's very important, and we are headed lower. The reasons why hyperglobalization rocketed corporate profits to unprecedented heights are both well-known and terribly inconvenient to the happy story that globalization will magically generate unprecedented profits everywhere. You know, it's interesting, the normalcy bias that has sickened our public has become unbelievably massive. Most people just believe that whatever happened yesterday or the day before is going to happen forever. And it's like the thief in the night that changes everybody's perception. And usually, it's sad to say, but true, it's not till the stock market comes falling down when the masses wake up. They need to see those red days, multiple red days, people crying on CNBC, the Financial Times and things like that. Until then, they live in a bubble, like how many people think that their house is worth so much, but they don't realize that the reason why there's none for sale is because no one can afford a new house. And also when they finally do list their home, nobody's coming in to see their house for sale because no one can afford it. The primary drivers were global labor and environmental arbitrage, also known as exploit cheap labor in sweatshops and dump all the toxic waste of industrialization in developing nations with lax environmental standards and enforcement. We've seen this. This is the China story. China has been going through its industrial revolution that we went through in the early teens and the 20s, and now China is going through that too. We reaped that benefit of them going through their industrial revolution and selling cheap goods around the world, including to America. While we exported our inflation to their country and others, We reaped this harvest. But the thing is it is now the chickens have come home to roost. And the last 23 years of our nation's history is about to make a big turn. Just because you can look back in the last 23 years and see only prosperity, which was led in part, actually mostly, by cheap money, an insane buildup of the credit bubble, akin only to the run-up to the Great Depression and the crash of 1929, being that irrational exuberance that came from a depression of 1920 and a flu. I want people to understand that these times are different. Going forward is a definitely different picture. Number 3, and we're going over the 6 reasons why corporate profits are about to fall by 50%. Number 3, quality and durability have been gutted, and there's no more profit to pluck from buying lower quality components and inputs, as the cheapest, lowest quality components and inputs have already been standardized. Who here sees products that are on the shelves now made of cheap plastics, subpar components, and go, they just don't make them like they used to? Products are not intended to last. As a matter of fact, they're intended to have a shelf life. Why? Because the companies need to keep figuring out ways to wreck you and charge you more. That's what's going on. And our country is suffering from its own inflation, because we're always trying to find the cheapest alternative, when in all reality, to spend a little bit more money, you would have a product that's so much more lasting and durable. It says hyperglobalization provided the ideal cover for the systemic collapse and quality and durability. This corporate institutionalization of planned obsolescence, abysmal quality, and shrinkflation all boosted profits enormously, but there's nothing left at the bottom of the barrel. Corporations have licked the profitable slop of planned obsolescence, abysmal quality, and shrinkflation clean. The super efficient global supply chains are also breaking under the strain of geopolitical and national security priorities. Isn't it interesting? Everything seems to be under the guise of national security. It just seems like they're using that as a constant excuse to get away with taking more and more of our rights. Number 4, hyper-financialization has also entered the decay collapse phase. Hyper-financialization drove corporate profits in 2 ways. First, as borrowing costs dropped to unprecedented lows, corporations could borrow vast sums at near zero rates to scoop up other companies with positive cash flow, gut the quality and the staff, and scoop up the resulting cost reductions as profits. Secondly, customers could borrow vast sums at low rates to buy products that they would not have been able to afford at historically average interest rates. For example, with 1.9% or even zero financing, new autos and trucks became more affordable. With demand strong, corporations could keep prices high and reap the gains of stronger sales. I need to add this little bit. Historically, interest rates sit in a healthy economy, between 7 and 9%. We are not in a healthy economy, and the proof is that we have had ultra low interest rates for the greater part of 2 decades. And you need to realize that when this revision, when we go back to the mean, and the Federal Reserve came out very clearly and stated, high interest rates are here to stay for a lot longer than you expect. There is going to be a purge in corporate America, a purge in real estate, a purge in the stock market. If you're not ready and you do not see this, quite frankly, I feel sorry for you. For you that see it, type it below, and we're going to go crush it together, because there's no stopping this freight train. Even if a freight train is moving at 1 mile an hour or 60, it will push over almost anything that comes in its way. It doesn't matter about the velocity, the timing. It matters about the impact. Number 5. The distribution of the economy's output favoring corporations at the expense of labor is finally shifting. And we're seeing a big shift as inflation increases and more general strikes are happening over pay disparity, pay increases. the corporations do not have the money to pay extra, regardless of how much the CEO pays themselves. They're running very lean and they don't want to give up their bonuses. This is going to be an internal struggle in our country over the next 12 months. And I think there are a lot of companies that are going to go under because labor is trying to get more and they're already squeezing their margins super tight. It says after 45 years of capital skimming 50 trillion off from labor, rising rates of disability, unfavorable demographics, systemic healthcare inflation, and social dynamics are pushing labor costs higher. Number 6, debt saturation. Corporate profits soared from $800 billion annually to $3.5 trillion in 2022. On the tailwinds of public and private debt skyrocketing from 30 trillion in 2000 to 95 trillion today, with the era of zero cost of debt over, we've entered an era of debt saturation. Households, government, and enterprises can no longer afford to take on more debt without getting triggering unintended consequences of slashing discretionary spending to service the higher debt costs of new and existing debts. Since growth depends on the ceaseless expansion of debt and the discretionary spending it enables, growth reverses along with discretionary spending. Corporations will find it impossible to keep prices at nosebleed levels as consumers' demand plummets while costs remain sticky. The fact of the matter is corporations have now their backs up against a wall. Prices, labor, everything for them are at all-time highs. And the general public, the consumer that would buy their goods or services, is tapped. It's finished. Credit cards at an all-time high, debt, student loan debt, all-time high, mortgage debt, all-time high. And inflation is not stopping. If you are still getting into debt, you are going to be not only part of this problem, you are going to succumb to its tentacles, and you will not be able to take advantage of this. If you are preparing, you're getting out of debt, you're buying assets with your money, you're looking at inflation hedges, and you're working on your patience level, you are going to be rewarded more than you ever have before. I hope you got something out of this. Take this into consideration when you're investing in the stock market. Look at the assets that you own right now and think about this. What would happen if once the backbone of the consumer is broke, and it will be broke? That is what the Federal Reserve said they're going to make sure of, because they need deflation. And deflation doesn't come because of good times, it comes because of bad times. Think about what you're investing in and what risks those companies have to what we just talked about with corporate profits. I hope you got something out of this. Thank you so much for all of your support. The Economic Ninja is out.